happened.
Okay, Chair, we're now live if you'd like to start the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Well, good evening all and welcome to this evening's Licensing Committee meeting. I'm Councillor Liz Morgan and I will be chairing the meeting. Due to the current coronavirus pandemic, the Council have taken steps to follow restrictions and health guidance in relation to self-isolation and social distancing, whilst balancing the needs of carrying out our regulatory functions. This is the third meeting of this committee that is being held remotely. The agenda for the meeting will run as per the usual format. I can confirm that the meeting is being broadcast live to the public. However, there will be no input from the public. They only have audio access. This is in line with the requirements of the Coronavirus Act 2020, Section 8. I will now ask all those present to introduce themselves, starting with my fellow councillors. Councillor Abbey? Not yet. Councillor Axel?
Good evening, Borough Councillor for Appleton.
Councillor Bigging? Not yet. Councillor Cooksey? Councillor Davison?
Yeah, here, sir.
Councillor DeRay? I know she spoke earlier. Maybe she's gone on mute.
No, I'm sorry, Chairman. I just went off. I was on mute. Are you calling my name out now, Councillor Dirra?
Councillor Register, yeah. Councillor Dirra, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Fellows. Councillor Kerr Brown. Councillor King. Councillor McCarthy.
Yes, good evening, Chair. Councillor Tony McCarthy, Ward Councillor for Rixton and Woolston.
Thank you, Tony. Councillor Mitchell.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor Kathy Mitchell, representing Burtonwood and Winwick.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. And Councillor Wellborn.
Yes, Graham Wellborn, Councillor for Sutton Heath.
Thank you, councillors. I believe due to some confusion over the start time, we will possibly be having other councillors joining us as we go along.
Councillor Morgan, Amanda King.
Good evening, Councillor King. Right, I will now ask the officers and those present presenting reports to introduce themselves. Democratic Services.
Good evening, Jenny Cordwell, Senior Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you. Legal Services.
Good evening, Councillor Rachel Maddox from Legal Services.
Thank you, Rachel. Licensing.
Good evening, Councillor. Dave Watson, Public Protection Unit Manager. I'll be presenting the report this evening.
Good evening, Chair. Catherine Parry, Licensing Manager.
Thank you, everyone. I will now commence with the agenda items. Have we any apologies that we know of, Jenny?
No, Chair, no apologies have been received, but just to note, Councillor King and Councillor Fellows have now joined the meeting.
Thank you. Now we go to the Code of Conduct, declarations of interest. Has anyone any disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests?
No.
No, thank you, Chair.
No. Right, next item, to confirm the minutes of the meeting of the 12th of January. I assume you all have your paper packs in front of you. Yeah. And notes, and I assume, or I would have hoped that you have read them, so Can someone confirm that they are a true and correct record?
Move we accept them, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Can I now move on to our next item, which is the street trading policy, to confirm the minutes? We've done that. Can we start now with the street trading policy? And that is Dave Watson to present.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. I'll present the report to you this evening. The purpose of the report is to advise members on the consultation on the draft policy and to seek approval to adopt the revised policy as set out in Appendix 1 of your report this evening, members. To distinguish the original document prior to consultation, those changes that were made prior to consultation are shown in italics, and those that are made subsequently in terms of minor corrections are made in underlined italics to distinguish the two for you this evening, members, and that's shown in Appendix 1. Members will recall that we presented the report at committee on the 8th of September. The reason for the changes are to further strengthen and enhance the report and policy in terms of safeguarding, to streamline some of the administrative processes, but also to give greater weight in regard to equality and to avoid duplication. And we also wish to address issues such as poor hygiene and waste. The committee gave approval to consult on the proposed changes, which we duly did, and that consultation took place between the 19th of November and the 17th of December, and the consultation was widely publicised across a range of areas, including the council's website and including social media. Unfortunately, we did receive a low response rate, which was disappointing, and is something that we will reflect on as we move forward. But the consultation responses are set out for members' information in Appendix 2. A number of specific issues were raised as part of the consultation, and we've addressed those within the report. I'm happy to take questions on them later, but the responses there are set out for members' consideration. One of the important aspects of the management of the town centre is the relationship in terms of people that are advertising direct debits and are stopping people in the town centre, and that's commonly known as chugging. But unfortunately, that's not covered by the street trading provisions because that is classed as a service and not the sale of articles and goods in the street. The next one I want to just draw your attention to, members, is the section 3.11 on trading near schools. At the committee meeting on the 8th of September, we did raise the issue about the ruling in the Scottish courts in relation to this matter. We have sought legal advice, and it's clear that that decision does not bind us in terms of the English courts. However, any condition that we impose must be reasonable, and it must relate to street trading, and it must be proportionate. So we've just made a minor change to the policy in relation to trading near schools to make it clear that this relates to food goods. We have looked at the nutritional waiver as well, which is set out in 3.12 and 3.13 of the report. We have approximately 30 traders that currently benefit from the nutritional waiver. I think it's fair to say that we've not seen a significant shift in terms of healthier options, but we're grateful for the work of the traders on this matter. However, we feel it will be more appropriate and proportionate to look at food hygiene, and that would give us greater public health controls and powers. So it's therefore proposed that the waiver is removed and we look at the revocation, if necessary, of the licence for food hygiene reasons. We have also reflected on the comments and consultation responses from both our legal team and our investigations and enforcement team. The legal implications are set out in section 4 for members and the financial considerations in section 6. The risk assessment is set out in section 7, and we're confident that the changes that have been made post-consultation are relatively minor. We have included an equality and impact assessment within the report this evening, members, and that is set out in Appendix 3 of your bundle. So the recommendation in front of members this evening is to approve the removal of the nutritional discounts and to adopt the policy as set out in Appendix 1 of your report this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Dave. Can I just raise a point there on the food hygiene? When we have street markets and there are food outlets, sometimes we get someone from those food outlets moving around the crowd, shall we say, the public, offering samples on a tray. Now that could be deemed as unhygienic. How would we look at that?
Thank you for that question, Chair. It is possible, depending on the nature of the event, if it's classed as a market, it may not be applicable as street trading as set out in the exemptions within the policy. However, from a food hygiene point of view, we do attend the event safety management group, and we will actively plan for events and give advice and support in terms of food hygiene. It all comes down to the operating practices of the individual and the stall, and we will give them advice and support on that. And if we do receive any allegations or complaints around food hygiene, those will be followed up and investigated fully. So we do have a team of food hygiene officers that would follow up on any issues that occur, such as that, Councillor. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Dave. Okay. Does anyone else any points to raise before we move on?
Chair, just one comment about the map of the Halliwell Jones area. Does that, I assume that goes with the document, but it was almost illegible. Using my strongest reading glasses and a large magnifying glass, I could just about make out some of the street names so that I could tie up what's on this plan, what is on this map, with my Warrington A to Z. If that's the go into the document, that does need to be produced in a more legible form. Yes,
perhaps for the future, if anything like that comes up, Dave, could we have that as a separate item, any maps in a larger scale?
Of course, Chair, and I'm grateful for Councillor Axel raising that. I'm just having a quick look at the document in my digital pack now.
This is often a problem in planning as well.
Yeah, yes. I appreciate that. There is some blurring and lack of clarity, so it wouldn't be a material change as far as I'm concerned, just to improve the quality of that map, and maybe we can look to post one online as well. So thank you, Councillor. We will reflect on that and ensure that there's a greater clarity within the map.
Thank you.
Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead, Tony.
Thank you. Good evening, David.
Good evening, Councillor.
Couple of things, David. One minor. It is some reason why workers and people are now classed as employees. What was the rationale behind changing that wording? That's one question. My second question is the overall document, which always is well presented, but there's an awful lot of half paragraphs and full paragraphs taken out and others added. Is this because of central government diktat, David, or is it just looking at our own Warrington Borough Council policy? What you know, there's a tremendous amount of change, and I was just wondering what's brought about so many changes, especially in this case, a couple of the wording. What's brought about that? Okay,
thank you, Councillor. As always, you've raised some relevant points which I'll endeavour to address. The reason for the change in terminology to employees is just to try and introduce some consistency in terminology throughout the document. So that's the real reason, to try and reflect that, to improve consistent terminology. And in relation to the reason for the number of changes that were made prior to consultation, I think it's right and proper as a licensing authority that we do reflect on our documents. It's not a diktat from government. It's not something that we've been asked to do. But it's important that we do bring our policies up to date, and that's what we've endeavoured to do with this policy. We've endeavoured to strengthen it in terms of safeguarding and to improve and streamline some of our administrative processes. So that remains the intent behind the changes. We've left those changes in for members so that we can show where they've been made, but the final document will obviously be a complete document without any changes showing.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Tony.
Chairman, I do have a question.
Go ahead. Is that Councillor DeRay?
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, Dave. I just wanted to clarify, when we're talking about trading or near to schools, does that apply to, or generally does the street trading policy apply to ice cream vans?
Good evening, Councillor, and thank you for your question. Yes, ice cream vans are covered in the street trading provisions and do form part of the policy. So those will be picked up by that provision. As I say, we have reflected on the ruling in the Scottish courts. We've decided to keep that condition in, and we will respond to any complaints via our investigations and enforcement team, but our approach would always be a proportionate one. So we always look to engage with the trader and to provide advice and support in the first instance. And I must say that traders have generally been very cooperative in relation to that matter.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Any further questions before Dave progresses with his report? Okay, David.
Okay, I'd just like to thank members as always for their thoughts and comments in relation to the report, but the recommendation is in front of you, Chair, in terms of the adoption of the policy. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Chair, could I just ask one more question, please?
Yeah, go on.
Thank you. David, yeah, you're referring to your disappointment in when we've done the analysis, asking people the questions on a variety of things here. Response is exceptionally poor, including equality. Roughly what sort of catchment of people in numbers was this aimed at? And again, in some of the responses, are we viewing it as being, if people don't respond, they're basically satisfied with the documentation? So how are you viewing it? It's, you know, unless you're disappointed, but sometimes you've got to look at a document, and when you had a survey, so if people haven't responded, they're probably satisfied with what we're doing at the moment. What's your view on that?
Thank you, Councillor. Again, we have written to all existing street traders, as I understand it, so we've given the traders the opportunity to comment. We'd always welcome feedback and be able to work with the traders and people that we deal with. So that's the reason for my disappointment. It would have been good to actually be engaged and receive more feedback. However, you know, we have endeavoured to do that. We've followed our statutory processes in terms of the consultation. We've given the people the right to a public voice and to representation. But what I'd say is, as always, you know, as we implement the policy, we'll continue to work with our traders. This isn't a closed opportunity. It's an opportunity for people to continue to engage with us, and we'll work with them and learn with them. And we'll, if we're necessary, we'll modify the policy accordingly. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Many thanks, David.
Okay, can we progress now then, Dave?
I think it's to the vote now, Chair.
Yeah, okay. We go to the vote. Can we?
Did you need to propose the Chair?
Sorry, Councillor McCarthy.
I'm just saying, did it need a proposer for the document? You need to propose it and second it, yes?
I propose we accept the document.
Okay.
Do we want to go to a vote now?
Yeah, fine. Yeah.
Right.
Chair, sorry to interrupt, it's Jenny from Democratic Services. Could you just confirm if a councillor will second the proposal, please?
Well, I was proposing it, Jenny, but if you're proposing it, Chair, I'll second it.
There we go.
Thank you. Would you like me to take the vote, Chair?
Take the vote now, Jenny, please.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Axel.
For.
Councillor Davidson.
For.
Councillor Dirra.
For.
Councillor Fellows.
For.
Councillor King.
4.
Councillor McCarthy,
4.
Councillor Mitchell,
4.
Councillor Morgan,
4.
and Councillor Wellborn.
4.
Jenny, is Councillor Cooksey here? You've not asked me.
Sorry, Councillor Cooksey.
4.
Oh, thank you. So the report is agreed as per the recommendation in the report.
Thank you. Can we move on now, please?
That was the only item on the agenda, Chair, for this evening. So that's the formal business concluded.
Okay. Right, thank you one and all for your attendance.
Thank you, Chair.
And
Thank you, councillors.
once again, a good ruly meeting. Sorry to for anyone about the confusion of the time of start, but there we are. We got the majority in, and we were well for it. So I do just declare the meeting closed.
Thanks, yeah.
Good night, everybody, and stay
Thank you.
safe.
Good night, everyone.